Anne said like 50, and then hello, hello everyone. I love all the networking, but we're gonna start now, if that's okay with everyone. Friends and family, please come over here. I'm lonely, and I need friends. All right, it's a little bit quieter, so we'll get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Nkapbela. Not really. It's Joshua Brooker. I am standing in for Anne, who tested positive a while ago with COVID, so they thought that having a beautiful mug up here would make sense. I don't know why I was invited, but I will take it. So tonight, we are fortunate to have two speakers as members of Keystone Merge that are going to be giving us some unique perspectives on their neck of the woods, and definitely excited about that. So what Anne made me say, I don't know if it's true, Keystone Merge is a regional gathering. It happens every Thursday, every first Thursday of the month, and it's really meant for Central Pennsylvania members, members of the community. Why not? Hello? Thank you. So the first Thursday of every month, they have a gathering, which turns out to be pretty amazing if you're not here in person. There are a lot of people, and they rotate where they meet. So obviously, Central Pennsylvania is York, Lancaster, Harrisburg area. And each month they rotate where they are. Today they are in the Candy Factory, which, if you don't know, is the best place to be, not only right now, but in general. My name, again, Josh Brooker. I am a health insurance broker here in Lancaster, and we specifically work with employees of small groups, self-employed individuals, and people that retire prior to 65. The reason I tell you that is there aren't a lot of brokers out there that actually do what I do on a daily basis. In Lancaster, there are probably 3. And the reason I tell you that is that one of the 3, not me, obviously I wasn't talking to myself, told me at one point it's kind of lonely doing what we do. You don't really have other people when you've gone out of your way to buy your office, to get your space, to be self-employed. It can be lonely. The one thing I can say about the Candy Factory is that you as a self-employed individual can choose to go out and find other people that are either competitors to you or maybe tangential to your industry, but you never really know where they stand. And what I can say is this space is very much an incubator of industries from all different places coming together, where you can literally bounce any idea off of somebody and get 10 different perspectives on that challenge. So if you're self-employed, I definitely think it's well worth it to be a part of this community. So today you guys are going to hear, like I said, from 2 entrepreneurs. Ophelia is going to start us off with Ophelia's making agency, and Benbruno is going to be the second speaker. I only said their first name because I can't pronounce Benbruno's last name. And with a son named Kieran, I don't want to butcher his name. So I definitely, I'm taking the pass here. So I'll give it up for Ophelia now and give her a warm welcome.
The first thing I always have to do, that's okay, I got this. I've gotten really good at this. That's always step number one. Vertically challenged here. Okay. So good evening. I really wasn't expecting this many people, but that's okay. If I'm going to speak, it doesn't matter if you're 5 or 50. We can make this happen. So my name is Ophelia Chambliss, and I'm going to introduce you to the Making Agency. I'm looking forward to the feedback, the ideas, the input, and I love this venue and this opportunity to do this. So I'm building this around the idea of meet me at the corner of career and culture. So art being a culture within itself, and artists needing to develop themselves as a career. I decided on the name Making Agency because by definition, making is the process of producing something. The essential qualities and ingredients that are needed to create something. And that's what a lot of artists do. And when I talk about making, I'm not talking about just fine artists, but I'm talking about any creative, whether it be a cake baker, a seamstress, anyone who makes the effort, who takes a side hustle that they've, something they're passionate about, and they make something that is of value and that creates a culture and that is something that they can sell. I chose agency because by definition, it's a business or organization that's established to provide a particular service, typically one that involves organizing transactions between one or two or more parties. But when I think about agency, I'm thinking more about having agency. So in addition to being an artist, I'm also a rhetorician. So I teach rhetoric and communication theory and media discourse analysis, but that's another hat. So for having agency means to take responsibility for your life, for that individual to have capacity to determine and make meaning from their environment through purposive, conscious, and reflective and creative action. So for artists to be able to take this thing that they do, make sense of it, create it, and then put it out there in the world. And it has purpose, and it also pays the bills. So what Making Agency is and can do, it provides services to artists and other creatives that combine the culture of creation with the aspects of a career. They can develop themselves into a viable business, a professional with a craft. What we would provide is a training acumen, help them make good judgments, quick decisions, and things that will support their work, to help them identify their own personal barriers to success. Connect them with the curated professional and industry-related resources. A lot of artists don't realize that there are resources, that there's an industry that has already solved the problem or answered the question that they're trying to answer. So the plan is to have kind of a series of questions, asked and answered. So you don't have to wonder, can I do this? Can somebody sell a painting that I sold to them? And do they owe it back to me? But ask those questions and have them already answered for them. The key thing is taking the fear out of the math that goes along with a non-quantifiable business. The first thing artists will ask themselves is, how much do I charge? Well, we're going to have a formula for that. You will always know, because it's that consistency that your clients will respect and appreciate. I want to talk about the origins of Making Agency. So for me, it grew out of years of working as professional development, doing workshops for artists and other creatives, especially in graphic design. One of the distinct differences between fine arts and graphic designers get jobs. They get paid for the work they do, and they don't have a problem with pricing it. Why can't we do that for our fine art creatives? We would be conducting classes designed to increase the functionality beyond the easel. So you may do some amazing paintings. You may do some interesting craft work. I don't care. But what are you charging? The right price for what you're doing? Are you getting the value out of your work? Provide professional guidance on several levels, whether it be the pricing, how to fill out an RFP, an RFQ, how to get on the listservs, how to get into different components of your industry. Not every painting has to go on canvas. You know, you can use your artwork on book covers, business cards, greeting cards. There are entire industries that use visual images. Working with artists for purchasing and commissioning organizations to make it more cohesive and make them seem more professional. In addition to getting calls and doing professional workshops with artists, I get calls from people who want to work with artists. And sometimes it's like, oh, we've got this one artist, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know how we're going to continue with this process. How do I explain this to them? So there's a language barrier. So working with, you know, their commissioning clients and working with them to kind of bridge that barrier. We will be doing 3 major parts: the internal workings of their business, their pricing, their time management, best practices, industry-related things. The external workings, marketing, social media. Are you connected to other useful resources to you? Are you in the industry places you need to be? And then the strictly business things: how to write a contract, how to do an invoice, how to make sure the terms on that invoice, you know, net 30 days, you know, change fee, you know, if you give them a discount, let them know it's a discount so when they come back, they don't ask for that same rate. How do you put all of that stuff into an agreement that it's not frightening for you, but it makes sense for your client? File management. Artists send things in for shows or events, and they're a picture that they took from across the room on an angle, it's dark, they can't see it. How to prepare files that are useful. And licensing, you know, copyrights, what are your usage rights, what are your intellectual rights, what are reproduction rights? All of those things that will help them take the thing that they do and make a living at it. Some of the questions I have in doing this. Location, location, location. How do we secure a location that's going to allow the access to the general public, you know, the buying public, and have the visibility so that it adds and becomes an economic driver for the city that they're in as well? How do we make sure that that location is also affordable to the artists and a decent working environment? How do we secure funding to make sure that this happens? Very often when you're going through, whether you're through a nonprofit or some other philanthropic area, you know, decisions are based not so much on trust-based decisions and meanings like, oh, how much of a profit can you know, who are the numbers you're going to hit? Is this going to make money? But at some point, you have to give it a start. You have to trust that, you know, just from, because we can't measure art and what it does all the time. So we have to go beyond just doing the math and recognize that this does something that we can't measure today, but 3 years from now, when we have this vibrant downtown community who are going into these art studios where they can see people working, there's your return. Would art buyers and supporters be more apt to pay prevailing rates to artists if they knew that they had come through a professional development program that removed some of the ambiguity that's sometimes associated in working with artists? Sometimes people are like, well, last week you told me it was $25 and you told them it was $15. So if they knew that they had gone through this program where they were certified, you know, we know that you've got a reasonable pricing structure. We know that you know how to read this contract. I'm willing to work with these artists. What is the best way to communicate with and address the confidence issue in artists when getting them to have self-interest and self-improvement? You know, very often artists, you know, get caught up in their work in itself and have that lack of self-confidence in what they're doing, but need to recognize that, you know, what I'm doing has value because not everybody can do this. It's not something that you can teach. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and why I've decided to do this. So I have been self-employed in fine arts or graphic design for more than 35 years, yeah. I have a background in business and corporate management. I was the director and the vice president of production services for a publishing company for a number of years. I specialized in new product development. You know, when a company is looking to build its market share, they look for creative solutions. So they would bring in a creative person to help them find those solutions. As an art director, I worked with hundreds of artists all across the country. And again, we're talking about artists who worked with graphic designers, so they knew the value of their work. And I would like to see us do that with our arts communities. In addition to working in the professional aspect of it, I have degrees in communication. So I teach in communication, interpersonal as well as mediated communication. And I have taught that at the college level. I've been teaching for 10 years, teaching rhetoric, which again, visual language is a rhetoric in itself because it is the power of being able to communicate. And as I was telling Joshua a minute ago, one of the things I like to talk about when it comes to the power of the visual image is that if you're 2 years old and you cannot read, if you're 90 years old and you're functionally illiterate, if you are from another country and you do not speak our language, all three of those individuals could look at a visual image and basically get the same message. That's the power of art, and that is why art and artists are so critical, and I think that is why it is such a cultural boost and an economic boost to any community that appreciates and works with that. And then I'm going to close with talking about the logo. So the logo is a registration mark, and which is a pair of cross-haired lines bringing things together, and it's about registering. It's about being on point and focused, and that's what I think artists need to be. Thank you.
It's okay. I'll come down. All right.
You can put it back.
So now it's time for Q&A. Again, we are live streaming this. So if you do have questions, please use the microphone, and you're welcome to come up and ask whatever you have. All right.
I'm wondering a little bit more about what you're looking for in a location and kind of what help you need there specifically, like around that problem, what help do you need?
I'm looking for something that is within 6 square blocks of our downtown area. Okay. I'm looking for a building, it can be pretty raw, but it has open spaces that artists can work in, whether it be little separate cubicles or things that we can divide up. So I'm pretty open in terms of what it could be. If I were to really just reach for the pie in the sky, I just want somebody to let us use it for a while, activate an empty space, and then see what that does for the community.
So you're not necessarily looking to pay rent for the first portion. Are you interested in revenue sharing agreements or kind of alternative arrangements to cover the cost of the space?
Absolutely. I would expect the artists to have some skin in the game, whether it be a small monthly fee, to be in that space so that they feel like they're in this as well. But I think initially it would have to be kind of donated to some degree. But yes, I'm interested in revenue sharing, whether it be some storefront lower level or something.
I'd love to talk to you more about that.
Excellent, yes. Yeah.
I don't know if you were just saying that to me or everybody.
I know, right? Doesn't that feel directed at you?
Yes. My question was relating to early adopters. My name's Elise Irvis. I'm from Harrisburg, and I am right. So it's about this mind shift, this cultural shift in valuing art and valuing creativity, right? Whether you're a energy company or freaking UGI, PPL, whatever, right? So who are some of the early adapters? I think that Lancaster is leading the way when it comes to central Pennsylvania, and cities who do try to shift value to artists and creativity, right? I think Harrisburg is lagging. So maybe could you share some examples of organizations, companies, whether the universities, or who are the early adapters who are structuring their revenue, their investments, their energy, their marketing? Who are the early adapters when it comes to creating the space for the artists and giving them and acknowledging that agency?
Okay. I'm not finding it to be so much area like York versus Lancaster or Harrisburg, but I'm finding industries. Healthcare industry is doing an amazing job. They're finding, especially through the pandemic, finding the need to really connect with patients, to cross over those different modalities in terms of how people relate and seeing themselves in those public spaces. So that's one of the huge ones for me. Engineering companies. I have lectured at the Illinois Transportation and Engineering Society. I did a lecture with them about art in public spaces because they're restructuring cities and putting buildings and roads and highways out there. They want to know, well, how are people walking in these cities? What do people need to see in the process, and wayfinding? So engineering, large state organizations like that. And there was another industry I was thinking of. I've lectured at math conferences about art because they're trying to kind of take the harm or the threat or the scariness out of math and numbers and engineering by trying to get, again, creative problem solvers into that area.
You talked a little bit about the funding piece of it, and I was curious if you yet are imagining what percentage of revenue would come from fundraising and donations and what that might look like, and what percentage you think will come from, clientele and who's coming to see you, and what you envision that looking like.
I would envision a 50-50 split.
Okay.
I would envision, first of all, it would be the space, depending on how that happens. But I could see, I think the equity of it would only be reasonable.
Between what you as the runner of the organization are bringing in versus what the patrons, like the artists who are coming to you for advice and using that, would bring in.
So I could see, maybe more of a 50-40, and then there's a 10% off to the side that comes from agencies that are looking again to improve the small business industry, like a Bloom.
Yeah, I kind of love that as a business model too, because I think it can be so valuable for other companies and organizations to invest in hiring of creative workers. And I can see that as working like a partnership with you, so that, like you had talked about before, so there's confidence when you're hiring a creative worker, understanding that it's a little different than maybe hiring a different type of employee or contractor.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes. Creative solutions are huge, and I think people are really starting to appreciate that. Okay. Thank you all very much.
I know. I'm sorry. So I want to give another round of applause to Ophelia, if you guys can join me, because that is fantastic. Like she said, we had a really good conversation beforehand about working on the business and in the business. And a lot of times when you are creative, you can get stuck in your process, and it helps to have a coach that would be there to make sure that you can get stuck in your process over and over and over again. So at this point, I do want to invite Benbruno. It could be Nkapbela. It could also be Bella. Am I close? I tried. Benbruno, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Give me a moment to get set up, please. But thank you all for coming. What do you think? Word?
All right. All right. So, my name is Timmy. I'll be doing a brief introduction for our next presenter. We know it's a bit unorthodox, but I'll be doing a quick verse to introduce him. And the idea behind it is that some things are better communicated through a poem, through art, spoken word, things of that nature. So this quick verse is going to allow you to kind of get why Ben does everything that he does and why it has value and why it's important. So, I've got needs. Because ever since ball, I got achy knees. And cannabis helps put my pain at ease. But who's going to make sure that my medicine's clean? See, I've got needs. Social anxiety bothers me. And cannabis helps me to be free to be. But who's going to make sure it's not too strong for me? See, I've got needs. Dealing with Crohn's makes me scared to eat. The drugs they prescribe are worse than my disease. Is anybody there? Is there help for me? 'Cause I've got needs. And trust me, there are a whole lot of me's. With a whole lot of pain, cannabis can ease. And I can't go buy drugs off the street. But I've got needs, all right? And like I said, the reason we introduced it this way is because we want to communicate that the need Ben is trying to address is a need that people should be impassioned about. It's something that affects you or someone you know right now. When people are able-bodied and you're able to get up every day without pain, it's very easy to take that for granted. But the fact of the matter is, not everybody has that, and the pharmaceutical options for dealing with that are not very catered to the individual or not very catered to your actual needs. So today, Ben will be talking to you about how he intends to address this need, the things he's already been doing and the things that he will be doing to help people who are dealing with anxiety, dealing with diseases like Crohn's or psoriasis, glaucoma, people who have a distinct need for something to help them with what they're going through, and right now have no real practical options that will solve their problem. So without further ado, here's Ben presenting on fiction formulations.
Hello, everyone. My name is Benbruno. Nkapbela. For you, Joshua, that's how you pronounce my last name. And I'm here to present on fiction formulations and services. We are a drug discovery and contract research organization working in the cannabis space. So I'd like to start off by thanking everyone who's helped me get here. I've had my company for 4 years now, and it's been a long time. It's been a long run. I started my company in college, and there have been a lot of companies that have helped me. There's been the Ben Franklin space, there's been York College, there have been multiple people here. So I feel like before I truly begin, and thank you again to Timmy, I would like to acknowledge all the help that I've received to get to this point. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for coming. Today I'll be telling you a little bit about our story. Fiction Formulations has been here in Pennsylvania, but not too many people know about us because we work specifically in cannabis. So I'm not only going to tell you about our story, I'm going to tell you about what problem we specifically solve. Timmy alluded to the need that we're solving. I'll tell you about some of the services and products that we offer, our goals, a little bit about our market and our timeline, and ultimately, my goal is to get you to learn a little bit more about not only cannabis and drug discovery, but also my company, Fiction Formulations and Services. So like I said before, we are a drug discovery and cannabis research and testing company. So we not only focus on cannabis research, but we also offer cannabis testing services to the industry in terms of medical marijuana or industrial hemp. And so the story, so this all started when I was actually in college as an undergraduate, and I was in love with a young woman who had a need as well. She suffered from debilitating menstrual cramps, and it was hard for her to even get out of bed in the morning. And being her lover, being her boyfriend, being there for her, I didn't suffer from those problems, but seeing her suffer from those, I decided to try to do something to help out. And so here we are. I hope I'm helping out. I hope I'm doing something. But the point is that cannabis was able to help her. She was prescribed opioids. She was going through different treatments, surgeries, and nothing seemed to help. And all the doctors would prescribe her were more painkillers. And they just got her addicted to more painkillers. So I decided to look for another solution. I thought that there were natural plants out there that would be able to help, but the problem was that they weren't standardized. We didn't know what was inside of these natural plants. We didn't know the exact formulas to make, so I decided to come up with them myself. I decided to figure it all out, do drug discovery, and actually discover what inside of cannabis and other natural plants helps people. And that's how I made Fiction Formulations and Services. It was all for one woman, but it was essentially to help out all women. And so like I said, the problem was that pharmaceutical drugs were, one, either addictive, or two, caused more problems. And natural products, when we looked at the natural product side, they weren't standardized and they weren't always effective. So we didn't know exactly what we were getting. So that's why I turned to cannabis as a solution, because it's a pharmacological treasure trove. It has over 1,000 different compounds in it. And once it's been studied medicinally, my belief is that we'll be able to synthesize and create new drugs to help with different diseases by using not only plants that already exist, but by using science and different medical techniques to actually standardize and create real medicine. And so I have a question for everyone. Where does the word marijuana come from? Anyone know?
I think it's from the government. Government, but honestly, you know what I mean? Back in the 1940s, I think 30s, there's a propaganda campaign to put people of color in jail. And from there, you know, kind of just blew up and kind of continued. I mean, I think that's the origins are kind of the bare bones of it, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's it.
No, you're absolutely correct. Marijuana is a fake word. It was created to incriminate African Americans and Hispanics. And so the word marijuana is derogatory. I do not use marijuana. I do not do marijuana research. I do cannabis research. And the reason why is because there's a distinction. Marijuana is derogatory. It's been used to put down minorities and people of color for 70, 80 years now. And so we need to change that language. So some of the products and services that my company offers is one, research and development. We've developed different methods in the cannabis industry for converting and extracting different compounds, mainly Delta-9 THC because it's such an important compound. And we've actually discovered ways to convert it into other types of compounds. And then quality assurance and testing. Like I said, we offer quality assurance and testing to the industry because it's a major need. And so the goals of our company are to, one, land strategic partnerships with big pharma, two, discover cures and treatments for disease, and three, to enhance our core testing and manufacturing capabilities. We want to turn Fiction Formulations from a small research company into actually essentially, you know, a drug producer that is actually going to help and change medicine here in Pennsylvania. And we've created a timeline. This is just an abbreviated timeline to show you that we're serious about the things that we do. When we set goals, we create strategies and plans to reach those goals. And so this is our market. We're looking to target really cultivators, manufacturers, and wholesalers in the cannabis industry because we offer testing services. Testing is a big bottleneck in the cannabis industry because, as you can see, it's required at multiple spots in order to ensure that clients or patients get medicine that is safe to consume and that we actually know the chemical makeup of the product itself. And so our market is here in Pennsylvania. Like I said, I started here in Pennsylvania, and this is where I plan on staying. So this is where we plan on first capturing the market. You know, there are over 150 dispensaries. There are multiple growers when it comes to either medical marijuana or industrial hemp that all need this quality control and assurance in order to validate their product, but also testing because the industry is so nascent. And so this is our team. Just want to show our faces. I want to thank everyone that I work with. You know, I couldn't do anything that I do without them. So it's all about gratitude. And honestly, I have a really wonderful team. So thanks again. And like I said, we started 4 years ago in 2018, and it had been honestly a really rough journey. I was a college kid. I was still a sophomore in college. And that's why I'm not afraid to show, you know, our finances here on the screen, because we went from a small startup that was barely making $1,000 to making six figures this year. So I feel like we've accomplished a lot, and I'm really proud of everything that we've done. And so our needs right now are working capital, and we're looking for a Series A investment. So that's our goal so that we can scale up our company. We have a testing service that the cannabis industry desperately needs. We have intellectual property that we've collected. And right now we're looking for just a little bit of a push so that we don't have to worry about, you know, keeping the bills on. So, and I have another question. So how does discrimination impact minority-owned firms throughout the Pennsylvania cannabis industry? Any answers? Aren't you looking at one? Yeah, there are. We're just not. There aren't that many of us. Get it out. Get it out. Come on. There's no rush. Ain't no problems here. Let's go. I would agree. Thank you. That's it. I'll take questions now. Thank you.
So it's looking like the federal government may legalize medical marijuana. I saw something in the news 2 days ago, or they're kicking it around, so that means in 10 years it'll happen. But are you looking like, are there competitors in every state to you, or is this something you could take national?
There are competitors in every state. I believe I showed a slide that showed the testing market and the overall cannabis market, and there are less than 10 testing labs in the state. We actually just registered as the 7th.
Okay, in this state?
In Pennsylvania.
Okay, but other states?
In other states, we've also eyed other markets, like the Maryland market. There are actually only 3 testing laboratories.
Okay, so you
there.
could expand broadly
Yes.
if it does become legalized?
Yes.
Okay.
Even if it doesn't become legalized, we plan on expanding broadly because even if it's not legalized, cannabis will still be used.
But can they do cross-state, though? I thought there was an issue with that.
Across.
Yeah. If it's,
From a banking institution, are you limited with
Yeah.
finance across state?
Yes.
okay. All right.
Thanks for coming up. Good question.
So based off of your last question, I'm curious if you could dive into a little bit more. I'm assuming that this is not the only challenge that you're experiencing kicking off your... We're a bit beyond... Sorry. I'm guessing you're beyond the startup phase. So what challenges besides the discrimination and experiences that you're having as a startup or going beyond the startup phase?
Growing my company.
Growing
Every
your
time
company.
I approach a bank, as soon as I mention cannabis, basically hang up the phone. Conversation's over.
Understood. Understood. Investors in the room, here you go.
Hi, thank you for speaking. So first off, thank you for addressing this because I think this is something really big. Just to forego the conversation here, I love Jesus. I love who God is. And so I do want to also preface that cannabis is a God-given plant. We use a lot of the wrong things, a lot of the right things the wrong way. My mom is in hospice care. She wasn't eating for 5 days. The normal drugs that the pharmaceutical companies would give her were not giving her the appetite that she needed to actually be able to swallow food like yogurt or water. So we did Drobanoid, which is a cannabis. It's been actually in rotation for over 30 years, if nobody's known that. But it still didn't have the full effect of, I wish I could have literally went to go and get some cannabis and boiled it into some tea and made her drink a little bit of tea, because I felt like that would have given her a better impact than these, 30, 40-year-old drugs that have not really had any kind of introduction to a new benefit or reworked. Secondly, when I was in Arizona, I had a girlfriend of mine who her mom was dying from cancer. And her mom, I would go on 6-week venture. Every 6 weeks, I would go and get an eighth of marijuana at the corner store of somebody that, that we thought we had trusted. But this was prior. In Arizona now, it's legal to actually go in and purchase cannabis and in different variations and forms. But the woman that I saw as a 89 frail 5'11" body went from not able to get out of bed into sitting up in her bed and able to talk to her children about life and the things that she really wanted to enjoy. So my only wish for this, to answer, I wouldn't even say to answer, but to ask you back is, discrimination impacting minority-owned firms throughout anything, but let alone the cannabis business. So very few of you get the opportunity, but can you please keep going for the rest of us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Every day. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing.
It's amazing here. All right, so I have a question, and it's more of a consideration, really, I think, than a question. My husband is a physician, and we get an inordinate amount of medical journals sent to us, and when I'm waiting for my kids to go to bed, I often read them, as much as that puts me to sleep. But I recently came across an article about terpenes and their antiviral components, right? So things like limonene, pinene, and their ability to prevent viral infections such as COVID. And I guess my thought or question is, to what extent have you considered that, right? The potential for isolating terpenes for antiviral or other components versus just pain relief. And so, yeah, that's my question or consideration. I think it's brilliant, and would love to send you the articles if I could get your email. So.
Okay, yeah. After the presentation, I'll give you my contact information. But to answer your question, as far as isolating the terpenes do have antiviral activity. They have a whole bunch of anti-inflammatory activity. But we're really interested in the combination between terpenes, cannabinoids, and let's say another class of bioactive molecules. So we're interested in the effects, the synergistic effects that come about from combining these different natural extracts, because it's not that 1 + 1 is 2. We're aiming for 1 + 1 is 4. We want to combine different compounds and then create a synergistic formula to treat different things, whether they be a viral infection, menstrual cramps, headaches. But in terms of what we do, everything is focused on a specific problem. So we won't do any drug discovery unless there's a sponsor behind it, unless, we have a clear use case, unless we're going to say, okay, well, we'll make the investment because we can see that, this customer is going to pop up here. If we can create a formulation, if we have that inkling from what we've seen in the industry, with COVID, you could say, okay, maybe we want to invest in antiviral solutions. So yeah, I hope that answered your suggestion.
Oh, it does. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great.
I have a question, sorry. Hey. So you mentioned that there's about 150 dispensaries, here in Pennsylvania. Being that I moved here from Colorado, I can say that there's probably 150 dispensaries in a 10-mile radius of Colorado Springs, from any point in time. They're on every single corner along with a gas station and a church. So, I mean, Colorado in 2020 produced over $420 million in revenue for taxes alone. Like, how do you see Pennsylvania getting there, and how can your business contribute to that?
With the infrastructure, with the research. You know, if you're going to get into the cannabis industry, if the state is going to invest in a cannabis program, it has to be vetted. There has to be a pilot program. There has to be firms like mine that are going to do the initial research and say, okay, you know, these are the products that would be safe to give people. We know because we've tested them. We see all the chemical constituents. We've looked for contaminants. We've looked for heavy metals. We've studied the plant. We know that the plant will pull heavy metals out of soil. So if cannabis is planted in soil that has been contaminated, if that farmer hasn't tested their soil, there's a chance that those contaminants could pass on to the final patient. And so that's something that we're going to prevent. And that's where I see us really helping the infrastructure here in Pennsylvania through the intellectual property that we've gathered. You know, we're not like hoarding it. We're not like, we're going to go get a patent. You know, our philosophy on intellectual property is actually open source. So we plan on releasing all our intellectual property open source for free for anyone who wants to, you know, use it or check it out or is interested in it to the community here in Pennsylvania. And so that's our philosophy, because we actually want to help people. And the infrastructure is not there. I would say if cannabis was legalized right now in Pennsylvania, I would not use it. I would not, because how do you know what's in it? You know, how do you know that you're actually going to get the help you need? Even if you go get, you know, a product, how do you know that this product is going to help you? Is a doctor going to tell you? No way. There's no research. You know, it's just guesswork. You know, they haven't fingerprinted your endocannabinoid system. They don't know how you specifically react to cannabis. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. And then we'll help you. So that's how I see us really helping cannabis take off here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I mean, to get a medical card in states like California, Oregon, and Colorado, you can simply go online and say, I get headaches, or I have back pain, or I have insomnia. Why do you think it's so much harder for people to get a medical card here in Pennsylvania versus those other states where it's medically and recreationally legal?
Is it difficult? I don't think it's actually difficult. I think I could just go on Google, and I would find a doctor here in Lancaster that would help me get a medical card by the end of the week. It's only Thursday. I'd be smoking weed this weekend. So I don't think it's difficult to get a medical card here in Pennsylvania. I think what's difficult is getting a product that helps you. Because just because you can get a medical card, just because you can go to the dispensary and buy it, doesn't mean that the people at the dispensary are trained, you know, to educate you on what products you should get, what products you shouldn't get. You know, so the educational portion is necessary.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. One more question. Oh, all right. So there are a couple questions that touched on terpenes, and in your answers you touched on how it kind of synergizes with the cannabinoids and everything, and that entourage effect is one of the harder things to capture. In like previous releases of THC-based drugs like Marinol, they've had issues with it because they weren't able to capture that entourage effect. In your research, have you found anything already, or do you feel hopeful about finding something to kind of be able to capture that entourage effect? I know your whole goal is to standardize it. Is there any direction yet, or are you still kind of trying to unlock how that effect works?
Yeah, bro, we got formulas. We got formulas for menstrual cramps, for headaches. Hey. Yo, I love women, so that's what I've been working on for years. Those formulas have been standardized. We put a lot of time and effort. The reason why we haven't released them is because there's no good way to, unless we create a supplement. We'd have to get a patent, and we don't have that money. I'm here asking for money. So, all right. Thanks a lot.
All right, yo, I'm sorry. I got one last thing. Ben's here, probably the most hardest working person in this room. I mean that. This man is up at 5:30 in the morning every day working out. So if you're going to invest in someone, you're going to invest in someone that's probably the most hardest working person in this room that is striving to change the world. And I just want to say that because he's probably my best friend. All right, yo, that's all.
What am I supposed to do now? That's not fair. That's not fair. No, we also had a really great conversation about how ridiculous it is that there are organizations out there that sell morphine and oxycodone and all sorts of junk, and they have a bank account. Doesn't really make too much sense. And that bank account is the thing that makes getting investments easier and getting financial institutions behind them. I have family that every day need cannabis to go to work. And it's unfortunate. But industries out there, including teaching, which, again, I say teacher and cannabis, and the norm is to think, how can one of our teachers use marijuana, right? Like we need to flip that script. There. That's my point. That is my point, is that the moment that they're seen as a teacher using marijuana as opposed to an individual trying to deal with anxiety because our school systems are so backwards with no resources and they're just trying to make sure our kids grow up fine. There needs to be some change. So anyways, I'll get off my soapbox. Feel free to hang around for a while. We're all here to get to know each other, and I think there's still food in the back. Now, I will say, like I said when we started, every month, first Thursday of the month, we rotate where we're meeting. Next month, it'll be in York. I will read where at. Catapult Labs with a K, which doesn't make sense. But they're engineers, so they can do whatever they want. So that's that. I will let you all go, and thank you for coming.